Okay, let's continue on with Republic of Carthage's rules. Exploration combat phase. So the combat is actually very much like the combat in Republic of Rome, but let's look at the exploration. You're going to be rolling 3 dice, adding your exploration rating, and subtracting 1 for each 5 fleets or caravans that you're short of the number required. So those aren't absolute values you need to get. You look on the exploration table, which is this piece here, which is new. And you want to get a 14 or higher, which is your success rate. And you can get bad rates here. Now, are there any modifiers in your favor? Because that looks tough. But you may get multiple tries, over time. If the roll is the disaster number, you ignore the table and lose a couple of dice worth of trade fleets or caravans. And the commander is going to take mortality chits for every 5 trade fleets or caravans gone. If there are losses every 5 fleets or caravans, again, it's going to cause draws from the mortality chits. Now, like Republic of Rome, only the people present in the situation that generates a lot of mortality chits are actually affected by them. So you're not going to kill off random people in Carthage or whatever when this happens. It's just the person who's there. A success returns the commander and their trade fleets and caravans to Carthage. The commander gets influence and popularity equal to the difficulty of the exploration, as expressed in fleets and caravans, divided by 10. Well, that's not going to give you a lot of influence. I don't think we had one out, but we had a picture of one earlier, and they're fairly 55 influence. That's not bad. And those cost what, 1 each to send the? I'm trying to remember. To send the points. Expedition. Yeah, 1 talent for each caravan or trade fleet used. I don't know why there's a difference between caravans and trade fleets in particular. If you get lost, you have to roll for losses and then roll again next turn. That's this set here. And the Raiders attack. That looks similar. You make a roll, you may continue the expedition or return at the discretion of the commander. Lost, you have to keep going, and you could start dropping. If an unsuccessful expedition saw their exploration completed by another expedition, it can return unless it's lost, in which case it still has to keep wandering around. All right. So that's kind of an interesting take, and those trade expeditions are going to add to the cards available here, in addition to being something that the person pursuing it wants to actually take. So it helps everyone to some extent. Now, as to wars, this looks very much like the Republic of Rome rules, where the war is going to have a strength on it, and if there's wars that are the same war, they have essentially the same name, like Punic War, they combine, and they'll be doubled if there's a matching war, tripled if there's 2 matching wars that are active at the same time. What Carthage sends out, armies and fleets are going to be worth 1, veterans, and that's the black side here, will be worth 2 points each. And you're going to be basically comparing the result. Well, so what you do is you add the strength of the force, which is the commander's military rating and the strength of the troops that he has involved. And it's going to be facing the war's strength. It looks to me like fleets may count normally against wars, which is weird. Let me see if we can see a war card. So this has 3-5 land strength, required fleet support, and naval strength. I think you have to fight the naval combat separate from the land combat. Okay, and you will fight this on the combat results table over here, which once you get your sum, the first thing you have to check is what the natural die roll is. Some wars, just like some exploration, are going to have disasters and standoffs. And those should be spelled out here, but I don't see them. Okay. Well, a disaster or standoff is going to cause a specific event to happen. In the case of a standoff, you lose a quarter of your forces. You draw mortality chits equal to the amount of forces lost. If it's a land battle, you get to create a veteran army, and whoever the commander is gets its loyalty. And the rest stay at the war. If it's a disaster, you lose half your forces, draw mortality chits, and the forces stay at war. Okay. But if it's not one of those automatic penalties, and there may be leaders who negate some of those penalties, those will be statesmen. They won't be just the senators like we have here. And we don't have any statesmen out. Like Hannibal's going to be a statesman. There'll be more than one Hannibal and more than one Hamilcar, because Carthaginian commanders all seem to have the same names. When you get a veteran, it's determined at random. That may not be necessary. Losses will have to be randomly determined, though, if there's a mix of regulars and otherwise. And also, actually, it does matter in this because there's different kinds of forces. Yeah. Whenever there are losses, you're going to have to draw from the chit cut per loss that there is, and that could be a death. Now, the last chit that you pull, that you're due to pull for losses, if that one kills you, you're actually captured, at which point you can only come back into play if you die, but also if you pay 10 talents, or this is going to be the greater of the two, or your influence multiplied by 2. If the war is defeated before the ransom ends up paid, the captive dies. If you surrender, I guess you can still ransom him off, though. If you have a victory, you get to remove the forces, take the losses. If it was a fleet battle, well, if it was not a fleet battle, unless the battle was a fleet action and there are remaining armies continuing to the land war, return the fleets to Carthage. The commander doesn't have an option to use those fleets for anything. The commander then gains influence and popularity equal to half the strength of the war. If there's multiple commanders, they get to split it, and there are going to be cases where multiple commanders are on the field at once, not separate attacks on the war. The armies are transferred to the commander's card. Whoever has the highest popularity gets them, ties randomly. If it's a land battle, they get a veteran army and it gets assigned to the commander. If it's a higher numbered war of the same type has already been defeated, this war is going to be a revolt. Otherwise, if there's a treasury bonus to the war, that's captured and added to the treasury. That's the only effect of a revolt, is that it doesn't affect the treasury, basically. It doesn't give you a bonus. The war may have other victory effects, creating provinces. It might cancel out a drought that the war created, and then the war is removed from play. If it's a stalemate, you lose your forces, you take the mortality chits, and you get a veteran army, but the forces stay at war. If it's a loss, defeat, you take your losses as listed in the defeat. Any commanders assigned to the war die. That's a little new, I think. I don't remember that being the case. But the forces stay out at war, and you got to send more forces. Failure is not an option here. If there are any wars that the Senate didn't send any forces to, they go into the unprosecuted wars area, and those may cause penalties that are more severe. Remember, also there's the total number of active wars. Okay. Now you hit the revolution phase, and this is similar to Republic of Rome. Basically, you get to play certain ones of these red cards. You go, oh. And, well, non-victorious generals check the public reaction table. If you were in a war and you did not end up victorious, or if you returned to Carthage during the Senate phase and you weren't victorious in the previous turn, so I guess you get two risks here. You check the public reaction table, which is here, and you see whether or not you're going to be held to blame for the war. And there are particular penalties based on what happens there. Ignore final results greater than 3 if the commander has not yet returned to Carthage. So you'd have to go pretty far down if you haven't returned. But when you return, you might be so shamed that you kill yourself. Okay. So it's not really a full 2 times the risk. At this point, players can play intrigue cards, statesmen in particular, or concessions. With statesmen, you can only play it if you have the family they align to. They're each going to have the same number as as one of the families in the game. If you don't have that family and someone else does, you can play it on that character for them, or you could conduct a trade during this period of red cards for red cards, or probably money or something. On the other side, though, if no one has that family, you can play the statesman. If that family comes out, you get control of the family. Remember, the family doesn't come into anybody's hand usually. Okay. Then any victorious commanders have a choice. They can either return their forces back to the Senate, or they can declare a revolt. And if they declare a revolt, well, only one faction gets a chance to declare a revolt, and that is done starting with the highest ranking officer. If someone's already in revolt, you cannot take precedence unless you are stronger, whatever that means. I assume, it's the entire force, including the commander's ratings, the strength of the force, etc. And then the other guy just stops being a rebel. Joint commands. One commander is a suffet and the other is a general. The general cannot revolt, but he's allowed to join the suffet. If they both hold the same office, the allegiance of the armies is decided via bribery. Each participating army drawn at random, and each contesting player secretly holds in his hand the bribe. The higher bribing player pays to the bank and takes the army. The other gets to keep his cash, though. Ties are resolved randomly. After the initial allegiance is decided, each commander has his option to retreat or to revolt. And then what you have to do, well, when you're considering your chance to revolt, you're going to roll on this table for each unit that you control. And it's less likely to rebel. It's more likely to stay loyal, at least in the early Republic, to Carthage itself. Now you're allowed to, I believe, put money, 1 talent per army, to add 1 to your die roll. If it's loyal, it returns back to the board. You can't keep it. If they're veteran and they're assigned to the commander who holds their loyalty, they automatically join him. And it's more than that. I don't believe they have to pay maintenance on them. Let's see. Right, they don't have to pay maintenance. Others in the rebels faction can, in this phase, declare whether or not they want to rebel. If they do, they're no longer in Carthage, no longer collect income, but they can share their treasuries with the rebel and share the rebel's ultimate fate. If they have rebel armies, they get to add them in to the. So it's dangerous to give one player too many armies under different commands, which of course makes the game more interesting the less players there are, or the more important people are in one faction. Okay, this is going to be another war for the Senate to defeat, and the rebels' strength is going to be the army strength plus the commander's military rating. If the Senate does not send an army to fight it, then the game ends and the rebel player wins, if Carthage survives the turn. In addition, the rebellion counts against the wars needed to end the Republic. Senate's not allowed to sue for peace in this war. Unless the combat result is all, both sides take casualties that are equal. If you get a victory, the revolt fails and the rebels die. And the victors gain popularity and influence equal to half the strength of the rebellion. Stalemate, the rebellion continues, and defeat the revolt succeeds. Now, I don't think this is spelled out here, but this doesn't happen immediately. You have to wait until the next Senate phase to send out a force to deal with the rebellion. So it's kind of in this limbo state when you declare your revolution. Okay, we have already talked about victory conditions. There is... Okay, what about optional assassination? So, this may be a change in the Republic of Rome assassination rules. Which is to say that you'll roll 2 different dice, one for the success chance of the act of the assassination itself, and another for what the effect on the faction is. I don't know if I need that. I'm pretty happy with the original assassination rolls. I don't feel like they get used that much, just when somebody's going to win the game. So it's just too much of a risk to use them. And I don't think this helps you in that risk. Okay, there's also a solitaire 2-player version. Now, I'm not going to go into the rules for this, but essentially what happens is the factions that aren't played by players have these cards, and they tell what they're going to do. And they follow kind of a bot procedure or an AI as to what they want to get done. To some extent, if it's at all like Republic of Rome, and it looks very much like it, they largely do reasonable things, but they're kind of dicky, and they may not be doing the best things in terms of supporting the game continuing so that people have a chance of winning. And they're also very single-minded about trying to grab stuff up and try to make themselves gain their own goals. Their goals may not actually help them win, but some of them will be very good at winning. So you got to be kind of careful about them. I actually found for Republic of Rome the 2-player rules are really cool, and I suspect it's the same here. It's just really this fun situation where you're working together to prevent all these little dicky AIs from screwing Rome over. And here I think it would be the same thing. One player gets to make a lot of decisions. He's the dominant player, and that's based on certain conditions here. They set up coalitions. You don't vote anymore. You have coalitions which kind of split up the spoils of politics. Okay. But let us talk about combining this game with Republic of Rome, because that, I think, is fairly interesting, and I'm probably going to do that, but I'm going to play at least... I get to play through the first period while I decide this. So what happens is, you play Republic of Carthage through the end of the early Republic. Even if the last turn has fewer than 6 cards available, you don't add cards from the second deck until completing the Carthage Revolution phase, which means some people may not get draws. Then you set up Republic of Rome, starting in the first deck, and the Republic of Carthage player also will be taking on a Republic of Rome faction. They're going to be playing in both games. Now, obviously, what you could actually do is align 2 different groups. One group starts this, plays through this, and then you bring another group in, and they have a competition, essentially. You know, one of the 2 powers is going to do better, and it's possible both could survive. I don't know for sure about that. But with the surrender war in wars situation, that doesn't guarantee the loss of a power, I don't think. So what you're going to do is kind of intermingle. So Carthage does a bunch of things, then Rome does the same kind of things, the sort of early game mechanical aspects where they get money, etc. And then each side has its Senate phase. In order, Carthage first. Then you do your combat situation. Now what's interesting here is the Punic Wars, because that's where the 2 games collide. And it's the only place. If a Punic War appears in the Roman Forum, the Roman War with the corresponding number becomes active on the Carthaginian board, and you have to dig through the deck and find it. If a Roman War appears on Carthaginian, vice versa, you have to pull out the Punic War that corresponds to it in the Roman game. And then you reshuffle the decks. Matching wars and leaders continue to make inactive wars active as normal. Should the Roman Senate attack and defeat a Punic War, it makes the Roman War of the corresponding number a lost war in Carthage. So you can fight that war, and it's not like the Carthaginians are actually putting forces out. It's not like they actually fight each other. Both sides have the opportunity to try to jump on that war early. Similarly, if the Carthaginian Senate attack and defeat a Roman war, it makes the Punic War a lost war in Rome. If on the same turn both sides defeat the wars with the same number, the cards will be ignored and we go to a special combat. And this is where you do collide. The Punic and Roman wars must be addressed in numerical order. The second war may not be attacked before the first. This is a special rule added to both games. The first Roman War and first Punic War are essentially two-part wars. First, there's a fleet part, and before you can hit the land part. If the first part is accomplished but not the second, then on subsequent turns the other side reconquers the fleet portion but not the land portion. Then the first side must again defeat the fleet portion before it can attack the land portion. Any leader who dies in one forum is removed from the game in the other forum. Pyrrhus, Hannibal, Hamilcar, or Scipio. Remember, they're going to be serving different roles, though. So, like, Scipio in this game is going to be an enemy leader, but he's going to be a statesman over in the Republic of Rome board. When both sides are attacking the other's war of the same number, resolve it as in rebel combat. Okay, so this is weird because this seems to be only if they, up here it seems to say only if they succeed in defeating the war. If the same turn the Roman Senate attacks a Punic War and the Carthaginian, oh no. If they both attack, they don't have to actually defeat it. Then we go to here. It's done as a rebel combat. The force with the highest combined strength and commander military ratings is the attacker. So there's sort of a default value to the inactive player. If one side doesn't, well, to the inactive country. If one side doesn't pursue the war and the other does, you could end up losing the war that way. But you could also like just lose the naval part and then you have to fight the naval part later first and to reestablish it on the other side. It kind of makes sense to me, but I'd like to see it in play to fully see how it plays out. There'll be no disaster or standoff numbers when they fight each other because it's a rebellion essentially. Any losses except all go to both armies. Victory, the losing side loses the war. If it's a no losses, the entire losing force is destroyed. If it's a stalemate, both sides will still be out there. And so on. If Carthage loses a war, you apply the same effects as if the Senate sues for peace. They'll be $25 down, etc. If Rome loses a war, the war may no longer be fought, and it'll cost the Roman Senate 25 talents each turn thereafter. So they start using Republic of Carthage rules for Rome under that. Any leader matching the inactive war remains in the forum, active if other matching wars become present. In the combined game, if either side loses a war to the other, 15 or 25 talents paid each turn is paid directly to the state treasury of the other side. Where's the 15? No, 15 of the 25. Gotcha. Okay, and you play this out until the last Republic of Carthage card is drawn, or if the last Republic of Rome early Republic card is drawn, whichever happens second. If Rome runs out of early Republic cards before Carthage, then throw the middle Republic into play. If a player achieves conditions which would normally allow him to win the game prior to its end, he continues on as consul for life or whatever. He keeps his power for the remainder of the game until successfully assassinated. He can be tried to be killed once per turn. To win the combined game, if both republics fall, all players lose. If Rome falls and Carthage doesn't, the winner of the game of Carthage wins. And likewise, if Rome succeeds only, then the Republic of Rome wins, whoever wins that game. But if both republics survive, the winners of the respective republics earn player victories in each republic. You rank each other player in terms of the total faction influence from second to last. And they're going to get points. And whoever has the lowest sum wins the combined game. You get a 0 for winning the game, and each other position gives you points. So like, second through fourth here would be 2 through 4 points. And you want the lowest amount of points. For tournament purposes, if this fails to identify a winner, consider all such players as having tied, but in a tournament, you use most total influence of both republics and then the highest single senator in terms of influence as tiebreakers, if you really need to know. If both survive, but the game is being played by 2 teams so that each player is involved with just one republic only, then the winner is the player who has the greatest percentage of the total influence of that republic at the end of play. In case you want to do something where you play not being on both tables, coordinating the 2 games together, which I actually think is the more interesting version. I think it would be kind of cool to have like 6 players instead of a 6-player table of Republic of Rome, have 3 players on each table, as an example. Of course, you could hold 12 players that way, but at the very least, Republic of Rome is damn tough when it gets too many players at the table. At least if you play by the full rules. I don't know if this is going to be the same. You get a different experience. There's no question of that. Because there's more of these and more of these taken out of the deck. And that's a big deal. All right. That is what we have for rules. There doesn't seem to be a lot in the way of special rules for the different kinds of troops. I've seen hints. Certain troops can only be used in certain things. I'm hoping that those will be spelled out in some of the cards because I didn't see them in the rules themselves. None of the stuff we have was affected by that, but I don't remember if it was like the Gallic infantry and stuff like that could only be used in certain places. It's got to be spelled out somewhere, and I don't see anywhere on the board itself. Right then. So up this goes, and we'll try to see if we can start tonight.